All right, and we're off. All right, so how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I was real tired this morning. I had a long, like 4 or 5 hour conversation, FaceTime yesterday, with a
Oh,
friend, and I haven't done that in a long time. And
yeah.
I'm up here in the mountains of Virginia, and
Oh, okay.
pretty isolated. So
Yeah.
I don't really know. I'm visiting my dad, and so yeah, extended conversations like that aren't about school
That's
um,
nice.
are pretty special, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think that we can both agree being in grad school, you're just just hit with so many serious conversations, whether that's in class or outside of class with classmates or at your internship or
Hmm.
it's just that's that's the way life is for right now. But
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
how's that? Yeah. How's this been? Because you're at you're in the last semester, approaching the last semester of your first year, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely not as I expected. Like my first year in grad school in the master's of short program was very unusual, I'd say. Expecting like, oh, cool, I'm gonna be with like my classmates, gonna meet with them in person. We're gonna study together, eat food together, go to Stonestown, like
yeah,
assemble
yeah.
or whatever. And like that would be, I was excited for that part, like being close to people. But then like because of the pandemic, uh, put like a literal barrier, right? That we had all be at home, do this online learning, which was very like I think it was very difficult at first, mostly because the staring at screen like hurts my eyes, and having like those back to back to back classes
Yeah.
with a lot of content to unpack and not having those breaks in between to unpack with your colleagues, it's not something that, yeah, it's not for everyone.
No.
So I'll give props to those people who we should do online learning at graduate level, like, because I was applying for those programs too, like, oh, I don't think I could have done it, because like if that's the way it is, right? Like I think I learned much better in person, having like the classroom setting,
Yeah.
because I know the struggle that not a lot of people have their own offices or a little quiet room
Yeah.
or stable internet or working laptop, and sometimes doing from home is not like a viable option for people.
Mhm.
But I think we're able to like as my first year classmates, we had like a Google like a text group thread that we should
Oh, okay.
text and support one another, help with assignments, getting resources here and there,
Okay.
trying to do like reading groups and stuff and like sharing notes, and that was like a nice experience.
Sure.
I think that was like I was expecting, and I felt a little intimidated too for being in a graduate course,
Yeah.
because like, oh my god, everyone here that must be so smart to being here,
Mhm.
and always had a fearful, um like, if I say something, I'm gonna sound like dumb, or I'm gonna say like an idiot, but like people are so supportive, like they encourage you to talk, and like, oh, it doesn't feel like a hostile environment at all, like people are there to support one another, to learn from one another. And I think that's sort of the environment that I really wanted, to help like foster my education and my professional growth as well, my personal growth and everything. So I definitely appreciate those moments that where classmates have your back and when we have their backs as well, and just start learning from one another and learning from the instructors too. I think that's a very well, being very I because I came to grad school with like maybe a little jaded
Mhm.
um,
You're
uh,
Jake.
like with a little jaded like perception, like, oh, I just come here to get my degree and get out. I know some people are like that, right?
Yeah,
And like, well, actually, I'm learning few things, you know. There's definitely other things I don't agree as much, you know. But I know it's at a academic environment, and that's like academic institution that has a lot of tradition and this just how things are at some point. But like, I just wanted to come in, get my degree, and learn more on the field. I think that's where I think I will learn the most, you know, like on the field, like with the working real people,
yeah,
uh, like with real situations, and I think that's how my graduate experience has been so far for the first year.
yeah, yeah. No, that's very. There's a couple things that I heard you say that are so similar to my first year experience and to many
Mm,
of my classmates' experience. Right, that we've had the opportunity to unpack that first year, just being kind of like, man, like a wave, like a just whoa, what happened? And I can only imagine what that's like coming in with just virtual learning, right?
yeah,
So I'm really happy to hear that you do feel supported in the program, right? Like and I think that's more telling of our program, right?
yeah.
There is something happening where you're still feeling supported, uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a culture, and I think that's something I saw as well, right? There was a lot of support, um, especially when we came to like have difficult kind of conversations with professors or with each other. I really did feel like everyone was coming from a supportive place, right?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah,
and so it's interesting to hear you talk about uh, kind of coming in with this idea of what graduate school is, right? Because I do think
yeah,
there is a lot of pressure coming in, right?
yeah,
You understand that you're in like a concentrated program, and
yeah,
yeah, there are. I mean, there are some really smart, very well read, intelligent people, which is actually what like you and I are, right? But when we come
mm-hmm.
in, there can be some hesitation, like, oh, am I? Like, am I?
Yeah,
Like, there is a little bit like of maybe doubt, and some feelings of like inadequacy. And
yeah,
that's totally part of. I think that's part of the program, right? I think that you
yeah,
should have those feelings, right, and are those thoughts, not
yeah,
feelings. I think they're thoughts, right? And
yeah,
once you get in, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, like I can hang in here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think also because of the grueling process of like application, you know, like you read those applications, gotta you just it's like a job, right? That you're applying to pretty much. That you're just reading like, am I this? Am I this? Am I that? Can I do this? Because like I didn't have a 3.0. I had like a 2.25
Yeah.
in undergrad,
Yep.
like over 10 years ago. But like, am I that GPA that I had in undergrad now? So some institutions still look at that, right? Like to see how you're gonna succeed academically, right?
Very much so.
But like, I was fortunate that I was able to, advocate for myself, like explain, because like my I took like 10-year break from school, I guess, like working, for myself different work, and like that's like I said, that's why I feel like institutions are good to, help you like help you like think more critically of things, but also like real life experience also can just be as beneficial, right? So that's like where my um that those thoughts of like, am I good enough, like if I belong here came from because of like that standards that graduate courses like set from the
Yeah.
beginning in terms of like, in order to apply, you gotta be this, like bullet points here that I rewrite. So I think that was like where the pressure came from the most.
Sure. Do you remember, and if you don't mind me asking, do you remember what you wrote about as you talk about advocating for yourself in this application process? Do you remember what you
Yeah,
wrote about in like your what is it like statement of interest or yeah, I can't remember what it.
yeah. So a little bit about like why I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to me, like, um, going to graduate school is more like it's like a choice, you know, because sometimes I think going to undergrad is also like a choice, but it feels more like a path you got to go through undergrad in order to get access to this other set of jobs, right? It's kind of like going to high school. It's more like a path,
Yeah,
and it is like a path for some, but not. I know I can understand it can also be a choice. I
sure.
know that might come from like a perspective privilege too, you know, like but also uh like to go to grad school you need to be really committed, like really wanted to do this, right? It's not like I was gonna go grad school. I think for some people can just be like have those thoughts like easily. I'm in grad school because I was very smart. I'm everything that the university is looking for on paper. And for me it wasn't that because like my journey to grad school started like maybe in 2016 when I was still looking for what I wanted to do. I was looking into like maybe MPH.
Mhm.
I always wanted to knew I was going to do something with mental health, working with folks like around that. And I applied for like a PsyD program at US staff. I applied for SF State like in that around that time too. Applied for Berkeley.
Mhm.
But then like I got rejected, like oh I was crushed because like damn I'm not like you know like it's like a brutal process. Like getting those rejection letters is heavy. I save them. Like sometimes I read them like oh
Damn
I
right.
wonder like you know I
Yeah.
just like want to see like want to see what it's like to have that and read that like after those times you know and like I wish I could have gone when I was younger. All those thoughts right. So that's like my thought process a little bit. Um, but yeah, then like I just like I'm gonna try again. Mostly because I went to City College in San Francisco on this community mental health certificate program.
Okay.
It really gave me like access in terms of like education and mental health that I kind of like a layover for me to bridge like my experiences, personal working experiences, personal experiences,
Mhm.
school experiences to I was trying to start like build up my resume, you know, for grad school and I found like so much like, you know, uh like oh what I could be, you know, like oh this is like a great environment. And in many ways the MSW program that we are right now reminds me a lot of that program
Mm.
because it was very like peer oriented.
Uh,
Uh like we learned a lot about the wellness recovery model and the peer model. So I think that's like wow, like in all of the strength based approach and all of that. So like wow, how come like mental health is not like that, you know? So I wanted to continue pursuing uh my career in that, you know, because I was getting a little burnout from like working in nonprofits, and because I should be like a community organizer organizing undocumented Asian immigrants
okay.
and myself as a former undocumented person too. I lived through a lot of experiences through the system, and that's why I wanted to work as a something in mental health. I didn't know if it was like you know uh, MFT, MSW, but then like talking to a lot of people, like thought MSW might be more flexible thing, the very close proximity of what I should do and like what I wanted to go in terms of career path.
Mhm.
And that's what kind of what I wrote about on my statement, like talk about my experience as an undocumented person growing up
Mhm.
in America with no resources, support, the stigma, and not having that dedicated support for undocumented Asians, you know,
Mhm.
and uh, and that also like took a toll on my learning, you know, like going to graduate school and myself, like having to face deportation myself and my family that we had to battle. And that's why like I really sort of value like social justice and community and like um and everything made sense, you know, like I think it's like going to social work makes a lot of sense for someone with my kind of experiences and wanted to continue, you know, working with people who are uh, for demonized, I guess, by like
Oh yeah.
institutions, you know, uh, all of this like systems of oppressions, against like people of color, immigrants, and other minority groups,
Yeah.
because of their, like socioeconomic status, like their race, ethnicity, and everything, religious beliefs. Um, so all made sense to me. Like that's why I wanted to. That's why I wrote, and I think hopefully there's something in there that
Oh, here.
grabs the attention of the readers, and to give me a chance. Because when they said it, like they only accepted like 40 people out of 300. Like that's not a lot. So
Oh, that
I
was,
feel very like, and that's that pressure, right? Like there's maybe just as 260 other people just as qualified as you, maybe with better GPAs, maybe better, well read, well spoken. They could easily just, yeah. And to me, I was like talking to someone that was helping me, yeah, get into grad school, like reviewing my personal statements and all of that. Like, why is it so hard to become a social worker? Like, shouldn't it be easy? Shouldn't it be easy? Like,
right.
it's like I'm trying to get a law degree or anything. I know that you have to like take all of this test, but like, why is it so hard?
Yeah.
But that was sort of like my my thought process during this very difficult process of like applying for grad school.
Yeah, man. So yeah, first this idea. There were 600 applicants this year. There's
Oh,
600 applicants to the program this year, and that it is really competitive. I mean, it's I guess there's only one. It's fucking insane how there's only 30 people, 40 people for what I mean, for your class. Like, it's insane, right? You would think that this falls more in line with like maybe like a business school, like a really top tier business school, and we don't really think about
mm-hmm.
like top tier social work graduate program, right? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know if we evaluate it in the same way. As a whole, as a society, right? I don't know if people
mm-hmm.
like, oh, like when I talk to people about, oh yeah, I'm getting my MSW. There's quite a few people who don't even know what questions to ask. Like, I have no idea what is that? What do you do? Uh,
Yeah,
and those are, yeah, I mean, those are very a small amount of people who even inquire, right? Because it's not something. I don't know if it's as popular. It's not as like attractive as the I have an MBA or I have a law degree, you know.
yeah,
Um, but I'm like I'm so happy that you mentioned talking about your story because that you have a totally different perspective and not only through living but your professional experiences, right?
mm-hmm.
But you can't replace that type of knowledge. Like you can't do that. So the person that you were talking about that we're all familiar with about, oh, like school has been easy for me, like I read, I regurgitate, I get my good grades, and then I just keep on moving, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that lived experience, irreplaceable.
Yeah,
Irreplaceable. The amount of, and I don't know I can only imagine what obstacles you faced, right? Just in talking to you now.
mm-hmm.
But we know through those obstacles, that's where the learning comes, right? There's
Yeah,
like just so much learning.
yeah,
Um and this is why, I mean, I think you and I both, let's see, I graduated undergrad in 2007, right? So I took an
mm-hmm.
extended period of time away from school. Um in that exploration of like, what do I want to do? Right? Like
Yeah,
I know I want to work with people. I know I
yeah,
want to support people.
yeah,
I know I want to make an impact with people who look like me. Everyone, but now I need to like narrow it
yeah,
down. And so many. I love that you talked about your experience at City, right? And
yeah,
within the junior college community. That's something I want. I want to. work in the community college setting, because I think there is so much potential in those institutions. There's so much untapped potential that that I think we overlook, right? And in a weird way, I think we're going to tap into that, like after, with everything that's happened with COVID, right? I think there's going to be a lot
Mm-hmm.
more people who explore the junior college route because
Mm-hmm.
they're not sure if they're ready to go and make that
Yeah.
commitment to the 4-year university.
Yeah.
But I know, I mean, I spent time at City doing, some prereq classes, and it was just fascinating to me. I would hear, like, I had a different perception of, I never had a negative perception of City, but I remember hearing people talk kind of badly about like going to a junior college, right? I distinctly remember that. But when I was on the when I was on the campus, I was like, there are a lot of smart people here. Now, maybe they're not really sure, like many folks. They're not, maybe they're not encouraged or supported in the way others are, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
have the the resources, but this is like, again, being in a learning environment is so, I think it's so transformational, regardless if it's a 4-year or a 2-year
Yeah.
university. The fact
Mm-hmm.
that you're around other people who are pursuing, right? Because you could easily not be there. You could just be sitting at home, like,
Yeah.
get there, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and this is, this is hitting very close to home for me, as you discussed, just kind of um, taking the time off and figuring it out. Do you? I'm gonna give you like a hypothetical. Do you think that you would have? Do you think you would have been ready? Again, total hypothetical. Do you think you'd have been ready to go into this program like right out of, like, what do you, I guess the better question is, what do you think it would have been like applying? Do you think you were in that state of mind to even write this statement of interest or statement of purpose when you got out of undergrad, maybe like 2-3 years after?
Like probably not. Absolutely not. I think I would have like crashed and burned, even if I was like, and also it wouldn't been the same experience either, because like there's like a purpose, right? Like, because you mentioned like, oh, people go to city college. I know sometimes might have like a negative connotation for
No.
those students, like they're like slackers and stuff.
Hmm.
But that was not my experience. Like when I was, because I also took some pre-rec classes there,
No.
and if you go there, people taking those classes, they're on a mission,
Oh
right?
yeah, like on a mission. You could see it in.
They're 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 taking summer classes at night, like
Yeah.
pre like 4th of July holiday, and like, whoa, like what is this? And like a room full packed with people like thirsty of knowledge and wanting to learn. And like you said, this does stimulate you to want to learn too. So I think like the props goes to all of those like instructors and teachers that don't have the same support as like those 4-year institutions, those people who are tenured, they get you comfortable. Like I think they need to like a refresher course to go teach a city college a class, and see how that will work out for them, and like because I think it's such a valuable, and I'm glad that we are making strides to make community college, something like should be that could be a good thing,
Yeah.
seeing people of different ages there, like so inspiring, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm too old. Like, no, you're definitely not gonna be the oldest one there. You think you might be the youngest.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't think, because I think that personal statement that I wrote, like, kind of wrote itself, through
Hmm.
all those experiences, right? That I didn't get it this time. This is why I didn't get it that time.
Yeah.
And I think at one point, I think it's like, I don't know if I believe in destiny a lot, but like sometimes, like, I guess that was the right time, the timing was right. Because like I also, during the time I was applying, I left my kind of like my nonprofit job that was pretty like stable,
Yep.
paid pretty well, not for like I guess nonprofit standards, but to get paid a little less to work for like a mental health agency in San Francisco.
Mhm.
that paid significantly less, but they did good work with the city and behavioral services, and like I really enjoyed it. I felt like I was not even working; I was just there learning. Like being with people like gives me a lot of energy. And seeing them like getting uh trying to strive to be the best person. I think that's like a rewarding on itself. Like
Yeah.
making those choices. So yeah, but I don't think like I give props for those people who are super committed from like going from undergrad to doing the jump to grad school.
Yeah.
But also seeing a lot of folks, even my previous job, like people who went to like UC Berkeley law or UC Berkeley as an undergrad and then Harvard for law school,
Mhm.
straight up like undergrad, and now like they were lawyers, but now they're like not sure, what they want to do. Or, yeah. So
Oh no.
uh yeah, so like it's just it seems like, oh, I'm bored, got nothing to do. I don't know if like that's like sort of the stereotype, but like people just I need to keep going, But I think taking those breaks are very important, Uh, definitely, or having that experience, because I think maybe would have been different if I were in a bachelor's of social worker program, right?
Yeah.
That can prepare you for the master's
Sure.
program. Because I know some folks do that at SSD, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense,
Yeah.
If you're doing a bachelor of social work, the natural next step is social work.
Yeah.
As
Exactly.
long if you, I think the only if you didn't like your bachelor's in social work, right? I think that's the only thing. But if you did like it, I think the natural course is MSW.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I don't know about your class, but in my cohort, yeah, majority of people did not go the BSW route. So it's
Mhm.
fascinating, and so not only is that part of the diversity of the class, but I think you mentioned something really unique, and I'm very optimistic about is the age ranges of students, and I think that's really important, right? Like, it
Mhm. Mhm.
was an extremely humbling experience to walk into a community college class as someone who never considers themselves really old, but sitting in a class next to people who just graduated high school, like I was like, oh damn, like, like, yeah, this is cool. And then to work alongside those people, right? Like that was great.
Yeah.
Like it was a really important and very impactful experience to like sit next
Yeah.
to people and I think that there can be a lot of division between folks of different age ranges. We're not
Mhm.
able to kind of see the commonality. You know,
Yeah.
I would say that it's usually older people. I just don't get them, right?
Mhm.
And I'm more curious. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, what's it like to be you right now, right? Like, I don't, yeah, like not that I don't understand it, but I understand that I understand that your life is going to be different than mine, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so, um, yeah. Did you ever have? I'm thinking about this, right? Like, I do. Were there any other people in your circle also who maybe were or currently undocumented that went more the route that you were talking about in terms of seeing like oh well what you're supposed to do when you get, because this goes back to this idea of like maybe America the country, well what you're supposed
Mhm.
to do when you get here is you're supposed to go to these really top tier schools, and you go to law school, you go to business school, or you go to,
Yeah.
right, there's like a message that's prescribed, right, and
Yeah.
you went down a different route. uh,
Yeah.
and so did you have relationships with people who went?
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know if you're actually very familiar with the undocumented movement, but um, I think that's when I started learning, like during my undergrad years, learn more about what it means to be undocumented and what you're supposed to be. And during that time, I think it was around 2010, there was this bill that was about to pass, like, it's called the Dream Act. I don't know if you heard about it. You
Yep.
heard it, right? So you know what the dreamers are, right? So I think like that sort of like narrative, like a dreamer immigrant, like a young, high achieving immigrant, like they deserve to be here. They are the best of our best, you know. Uh, so I think that was like sort of the pinnacle that we as young folks who haven't able to explore our undocumented identity
Yeah.
had to aspire to, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So if you're not like a 4.0 going to all these prestigious colleges, trying to pursue master's degree, you are not one of them. And I definitely didn't feel like one of them because of my failing classes. You know, I got barred from my university for failing it. I had to switch majors,
Mm.
and I was able to graduate though. But like, you know, still I had that. Oh, you still look young, you know, and adding the factor like I'm Asian, right? Like so people are like, oh, you're Asian, you're smart, so you fall into those that model minority myth as well that you're getting successful because of your race, your ethnicity, and then you like people who believe that, you know, like, oh, in order for America to want us, we need to be contributing members of society by doing the sort of like the things that will look good, you know, on you. Like I'm gonna become a lawyer so I can help others. I'll become nurses, doctors, all of this prestigious like careers that people can respect, right? So there's definitely a lot of that, you know. But I think also I also believe that a lot of those people genuinely wanted to do those things as well
Okay.
for their communities, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like a survival tactic, right? In a way that you have to do what you got to do to like. But people started like to claim back sort of their narratives, I guess, like about, oh, I wanted to reclaim, you know, this like because like when we talk about the high achieving immigrants, young immigrants and are documented, we leave this whole like group, you know, of like people who are not able to go to school or like university, grad school, who are barely able to like, you know, make rent and stuff, and like people who don't prescribe to that narrative, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a very toxic thing that used to happen back in the day.
Yeah.
That sound like, oh, you make us look bad, you know. But but I think from my years of recognizing that narrative has changed dramatically in terms of like incorporating a lot of people, even those who were like caught by doing like some misdemeanors, some petty crimes, you know, uh, because like that's like normal. People make mistakes, right? And like I think there's like a that's how what happens, you know. And I think that people just mostly judge them by their actions instead of like taking that zoom out and like having the social worker perspective, guessing like, oh, what are the circumstances that why this person should do that? You know,
Yeah.
like food insecurity, housing security, all of those things, you know. How we could have instead of like criminalizing people, so like, oh, what could we do to support them, you know, themselves? And because it's like a lot of pressure, man. Like I gotta tell you, like you document, like you gotta be. I remember like telling my story, like I don't know if my story uh, compares to these other people because it's kind of like again that vocation going into grad school, right? Like I don't think I was not a valedictorian, I was not a this, I was not a that.
Yeah.
I didn't even do community service in my during high school, so like how can I compare to those people who are going on TV and talking about their stories?
Sure.
I didn't feel represented, right? And I'm sure a lot of people didn't either. And we were trying to strive to that, but fortunately things have like changed and like, you know, we are able to like kind of take back our stories and like, you know, add sort of like the mistakes or character flaws, personalities, you know, and just being unique, you know, because every person they talk to, it's so hard to like group all of those groups in one narrative, you know, even
Absolutely.
for political purposes, right? I think, uh, and it seems like very gratifying seeing now, like those people who were grew up as like dreamers, you know, trying to say like, oh, no, I need to, y'all need to include my family too, my parents, because they're the ones who made the sacrifices for us to be here. Because I remember like the narrative was like, oh, they're here through no fault of their own because their parents brought him, so the parents are to blame, but not the kids.
Yeah.
Like I want to be here with my parents. They're the ones like they're the ones who supported me, right? Like provide like a roof over my head, food over my for me, like
Yeah.
emotional support and everything. So to me, like that didn't make sense at all. Like that we're blaming your parents, and I know a lot of people resented their parents because of it for not being like, but understanding like the migration, like why people leave. It's
Mhm.
not an easy choice. Like who wanted to leave your home? Like you have a home, your home country, and you have all these things. There's like all of these forces, right? That I think I wish people could have more empathy and learn more about like the person, their story, what they've been through, instead of just like judge them and slap them with a label and like, oh, and like see what the definition of that label is, and like does define them what the label is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly why that's what made me want to talk to you because I listened to you talk briefly about your internship
Mhm.
and one of the communities that I've had the least exposure to, and I understand the Asian community is an umbrella, right? And it's very diverse, right? You
Yeah.
can't like it's yeah, I don't like to necessarily even use like it's such a like it's a standard word, but I
Right.
understand my exposure growing up in San Francisco, the diversity within the Asian umbrella, and every
Mhm.
experience is not the same. And I also
Yeah.
recognize that as being part of like that's a major issue when we talk about any community, right? Like everyone doesn't have the same experience. They
Of
don't.
course. Yeah.
And so I wish it was I wish it was that simple, but it's not. Um, and I'm curious. I love people. And so I always want to understand more experiences. But one of the things I never really understood early on, specifically when I was exposed um, to more, I guess, more stereotypes about Asian people, right? Where I was like, well, everyone's not doing great. Like, that's impossible. Everyone's smart. Like, that's not, yeah, I always question that. Right. And then
Mhm.
yes, I can see. Yes, there are very successful, there are very hardworking Asian people.
Mhm.
But what are the other stories, right? What are the stories we don't hear about, right?
Mhm.
Like everyone is struggling. Like there's a major, I like to think that a lot of the root of all of our issues is economic disparity, right? It
Yeah.
really doesn't matter like what really doesn't matter what skin tone you are, what country you come from. Like in this country, a lot of people care about the color that people care about is green. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
they really don't care. Like if you've got money, then people will let you in the door.
Yeah.
Whatever, they're more comfortable with you. And so yeah, it was really important to me to be exposed, and I'm so happy that you talk about your experience, right? Because this is the narrative that is not dominating the headlines, right?
Mhm.
And so uh, yeah, we can't, yeah, I just don't want to get yeah, I don't ever want to fall into that cycle. I don't ever want to fall into that cycle. And um so yeah, I guess let me say thank you for doing this. Now that we're like all the way in, like I really appreciate this because this is the learning that I wanted coming into grad school, right? Like
Mhm.
this is what I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn about people's narratives. That's
Mhm.
the learn
Mhm.
similar to what you wrote about. That
Yeah.
that's those are like, okay, yeah, all right, now, yeah, this is making sense. This theory in
Yeah.
a book to me is all well and good, but if I
Yeah.
don't know the person who I might be supporting, then this theory means nothing,
Yeah.
right? Um, so what was your, if you can kind of go back and think about um, what was your perception? Because I think right now we are at this um, we're at a very divisive time, right?
Mhm.
And although I believe the root issue of this is economic disparity,
Mhm.
I do think that a lot of people aren't. I don't know if that's something that people have addressed, or again, generalizing.
Mhm.
The headline that dominates our news cycles and our feeds is more race based, right? So, and not to say that that isn't a reality. I, like,
Mhm.
I don't think it's the root of the issue.
Yeah.
What was what was your perception, or what was your idea when you're kind of coming into the country and learning more about like what America is in terms of
Yeah.
ethnicity? Like, what was your understanding? Or like, what was the? Yeah, that's the part that I'm trying to understand as someone who like grew up here, and like especially as a black male, right? Like, I was very aware growing up of what people perceived me to be, right?
Mhm.
My idea of like I was very fortunate to have not only I was fortunate enough, one, my mother is Mexican, my dad's black, right? I've always been in a situation, well, not always, but early on, I think whenever I was in social gatherings, it was either I'm not Mexican enough or I'm not black enough, whatever
Mhm.
whatever that means. Um, and so that always that encouraged me to just be okay with who I am. Like, I don't
Mhm.
care what, like, all right, great. Like,
Yeah.
I guess I'm not, but this is me.
Yeah.
So what was your experience like in
Yeah. Because like it's something I don't think I mentioned, like, because I was actually born and raised in Brazil.
no
My
shit.
parents are Chinese. Yeah, my parents are Chinese. So I lived there in Brazil for 16 years.
Okay.
Uh, and then when we moved to the country, United States in 2005, I was like, yeah, 16, and then started my sophomore year. And my first, I guess, like reality hit about like what America is like when I stepped foot in my high school. I was surprised because like, oh, there's no white people here. There's
Yeah,
like there's like blacks, Asians, Latinx.
yeah,
I was like, oh, that's nothing like I used to watch on TV,
yeah,
like yeah, like I was so shocked. I'm like, oh, there's like maybe one or two, and like most of the instructors are white, right?
yeah.
I was
Yep.
like, oh, I guess that's like I'm not. I didn't know what America is. I thought
Mm,
it was like a white country, but like I guess it's not. Because in Brazil, like things are pretty diverse. Like people are, like very mixed, but also there's like uh, you kind of can tell like there's like a lot of like folks are black, like white, and some mixed,
yep.
uh, and some Asians. I didn't know I was gonna need like this sort of like diversity in there, like you're not, and like within the diversity there's like people who are from like Guatemala, Mexico, like from Taiwan, China, Hong Kong, like Vietnam, like so many different countries.
Yeah.
And I also had like a sort of like a difficult time fitting into high school. For being a high school setting, obviously for any young teenage
Yep.
person, right? It's like a normal, but also like because I was in those ESL classes, right? English as a second language, and there's like a division, right? Folks
Oh,
who spoke Spanish and folks who spoke Cantonese in one side. Not like one side, but like you know what I mean,
no,
right?
no, I
Like
get, no, totally.
uh and and people like they see like, oh, this guy looks Asian. His name is like Wei, so it's Asian.
Yeah.
The people come to Cantonese with me like, oh, I don't sorry, I don't speak Cantonese, like they're like, oh, okay, they leave me alone. And then like the other folks who speak Spanish like, hey, from Brazil, that's cool. They don't speak Spanish, so leave me alone.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like I felt like, oh, I so it's not like the same experience as yours, but I also felt like torn apart a little bit, like, oh, I don't have a community here, like of course, like and my English was pretty decent at that time, so I was able to communicate fairly decent, but I didn't find a group in high school like either Asians or Latinos. Like I just but I was eventually able to like learn more about sort of like uh what it means to be being an Asian, growing up in the United States, but like I think there's some days like, oh, today I'm feeling a little more Chinese, other days I'm feeling more Brazilian, you know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I have those days too, right? Like, um, but yeah, I think that was very interesting, growing up here and like seeing the diversity, and then going to college and like continue learning more about that, you know, like learning the history of United States and how things were. And yeah, I think it was just like a big shocking surprise for me. Like I think that's like the first memories I recall about getting a taste of what America is, you know. But yeah, I think that was like, yeah, that was like sort of my experience with it a
yeah.
little bit.
That's like and again, that's an experience that is, um, yeah, again, not told, and so interesting because when you think about it, I mean, like, yes, those are two huge. When you talk about being in an ESL class and Spanish speaking students and Cantonese speaking students, right? Like those are huge. Those are
Yeah,
large populations, and right, like
yeah, yeah,
should be kind of, I guess, should be more normalized, right? But
yeah,
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 that's what we think about. And I mean, even hearing you talk about that, you're like, nah, like I'm from Brazil. I'm like, oh damn, really?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Which gives me more context into like your experience. Like you
yeah,
were in Brazil, and you grew up around. You're talking about diversity, right? You
yeah,
grew up around a lot of like very brown people, and then even Brazil is extreme. Like the culture of Brazil is extremely diverse, right? Just based off the history
yeah,
of the country,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and then going in, and then language being the barrier, language being
Yeah,
such a barrier. And there is a common theme there of
yeah,
not having the community or not being enough in some
yeah.
way, right?
I think like language being the barrier for like socialization, right? Because people wanted to speak their native language as a way of comfort from home, right? Like, because people will speak like English, okay, but like doesn't feel like
Yeah,
it's like a bonding thing, right? It's feel like foreign for them, I guess, especially if they're like new students, you know, who just started too. So there's a lot of a lot of that.
what has your and kind of going back to this idea of supports? Were your parents extremely supportive of you pursuing mental health, not just at the graduate level, right? Because you've been doing
Mm-hmm.
this for a long time, right? You've
Yeah,
been doing this for, what, a decade. um,
yeah,
and yeah, what was that? What was that like? You talked about, some um, some people resenting their parents, right? And so,
yeah, yeah. Mostly things were patched up at this point, because like 'cause people had like time to do self reflection, and I think they were just like, you know, uh they were vulnerable to the situation, like taken advantage of by like advocacy groups, maybe
yeah,
politicians, even, you know. So I don't blame them. I think it's just like the circumstances, and like um yeah, because I think that's part of like conflict is the healing too, you know. It's all
absolutely.
about healing as well. I believe, you know. And for my parents, I didn't think they even had to say to me, because I was like, oh, I need to be under the radar, you know. Like I grew like went to like it's so easy to be invisible in high school,
Oh
but
yeah.
like when you actually try to make an effort to be invisible, that's like the next level, right? So that's why, like, oh, I don't know if I can talk to people when people can talk to me, like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk to you, you know, like, and but I'm a social person. I want to like, I'm an introvert, but also I need that sort of like that closeness, you know, intimacy and friendship as well. But yeah, that was difficult, like growing up and going. I think what happened was like being able to go to places that people talk about these things about policies or like social justice. That's when I started like learning a little bit about like, oh, there's actually some good people in America, you know, that care about these things, you know.
Yeah.
When I started feeling more comfortable, my guards were like starting peeling away, and also during that time too, Um, and I think it was after I graduated college. I went back to San Francisco, and then like, oh, why now? I wanted to continue that community that I found in college.
Yeah.
Just asking around, I found like this undocumented Asian group actually.
Okay.
Um, that the first time I feel like I felt seen and heard. Like, wow, people will look like me,
Yep.
similar stories. We're going up thinking we're the only undocumented folks here, but knowing this way beyond like this Latinx folks being undocumented.
Mhm.
And yeah, and my parents, I think, um, they always like preach caution, in a way, because when I came here, I was already aware we're gonna be undocumented when we overstay our visas.
Mhm.
But some people grew up without that knowledge. I think that was like the difference.
Yep.
Um, is I went to like, oh, can I get my let's go get our driver's licenses or let's go to this trip, but we don't have those documents.
Yeah.
That's like the first time that people start realizing from what I heard from like previous friends and like colleagues too. But for me, I already knew, so I was like, my parents didn't have to sugarcoat or anything. And I think they saw me like, especially because I was able to work on our deportation case with this nonprofit that I ended up working after too. They saw that like, oh, I'm doing good. They trusted me like, oh, there's people who want to help us. So like, I kind of tried to create this trust, that for my parents that I knew what I was doing, also that I was gonna help protect them and their family,
Yeah.
and there are good people out there too.
Mhm.
Because they met some of the lawyers at the nonprofit. And one of the great things I was able to do was like having uh, my family in a rally in front of like some of Dan Feinstein's office, like talking about our deportation case and like uh, to like a crowd like 100 people and stuff in San Francisco and like just sharing that we need their support, to stop ICE from deporting my family and this other person's family too. That we're doing like a uh, community organizing campaign for it. And I think that was like my first time, like actually feeling so much relief, being able to go on Facebook and talking to people. And people were like, wow, I didn't know. Thanks for sharing your story. I was afraid, like, I don't know if people are going to hear backlash. Even my roommate college didn't know. And he was like, are you serious, man? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But it's just like, it was definitely like a process, that I had to be mentally like prepared. And that was before like protections for undocumented young folks,
Yep.
or during that time, but it was still like a difficult thing to do, like a path like to fight your deportation like so much so publicly. We had a good folks and we had a good case and we were able to close our case as like in a way just kind of like I guess in like lawyer language like putting uh your deportation case at the bottom of the pile. I think that's how they explained it to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and my parents like just like just I think just they wanted me to be happy, and wanted me to like continue like just oh yeah like just do your thing, just do hard work and like it's kind of like an Asian parent would say, like continue your hard. And when they say like oh I'm gonna move like change jobs, they were a little concerned because like oh you have a stable job like
Yeah.
and went to grad school like oh you don't really need to go to grad school and stuff, but like I was like I do, which is very different from like when I used to go out in Brazil like oh yeah I go study hard, you're gonna become a doctor, a lawyer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
their narrative shifted so much, because like I see people pressuring like kids like to continue climbing that ladder, right? That imaginary professional ladder. But yeah, my parents like they're supportive, like they uh, helped me like through a lot of things. They even supported when I was going to city college, taking like those night classes. And yeah, so I'm very like grateful for them, to be supportive and like um and I think they're definitely one of the reasons like I where I'm at right now
Yeah.
and doing the things that I'm doing because I owe it to my younger self and owe it to my family who are in those circumstances to continue working with people who might be in similar situations or different situations too. Because like you said, like there's there's so many potential on a lot of people,
So much.
uh, and uh, and I think that's like as a social workers, that's how we going to you know yeah create change.
Yeah. Where do you get your are you kind of a healthy mix of both parents, or do you kind of like do you get, majority of your personality from one or the other?
I don't know, like it's just
Or maybe not even your
uh,
parents. Some people are like their grandparents, or like they're like from like another. They're like sometimes you're like, oh my god, you're just like your aunt or your uncle, or whatever it may be. Like, you ever thought about that?
uh actually I've been having some conversations with one of my older cousins in Brazil about it
Okay.
because she should be very outspoken and stuff like that, and my dad and my other uncles was kind of like, oh no, you gotta be like quiet, like this, like things will. I think that was during like sort of like the tail end of the dictatorship in Brazil, where like when there was like no free press and things like that. So, and because she was already born, but like so like she's like, oh, like she told me like you bring me so much like pride for like doing the things you're doing, being outspoken and like so I guess in a way probably a little bit of her, even though like I didn't have a lot of chances to hang out with her when I was in Brazil, but we talk once in a while too, yeah. But yeah, I think there's definitely some elements here, bits from my parents and relatives, but like I think this sort of vision reminds me a lot of my cousin in Brazil.
See, this is, I mean, just talking to you and listening to your story, man. Like this is giving me energy to like keep doing the work and keep learning, right?
Yeah.
Not that I mean, I think in listening to you, I had my fair share of issues, but in comparison, I'm like, shit, dude. Like, I can't even. I don't know what that's like. Like, I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
Mm,
And
yeah.
you are able to like laugh. I asked you about who you resemble, because I'm like, man, you're cool as a fan. Like, you're like, yeah, man. Like, dude, I'm working. I've been through a lot.
Yeah.
Not only have you been through a lot, but you've re-entered that space,
Mhm.
gone back to that uncomfort, right?
Yeah.
Because I've got to assume at some points, right? You see people in your work that remind you of you, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, just listening to you talk about actually working on your deportation case.
Yeah.
That's like, what other example? Like, I don't know. Even
Yeah.
I can't make a clear example. Like, oh, you're working on making the case for you staying somewhere, right?
Yeah.
That's incredible, man. That
Mhm.
that is incredible. I mean, I just moved my mom out of her home of 43 years in the Mission District in San Francisco. Um, building went up for sale. Kind of classic story in San Francisco, right? Like you hear that
Yeah.
quite a bit. And I understand, like it was probably a little bit easier for me initially because I don't have a problem moving. Like I'm
Mhm.
okay with that. Like I like to go. Like I like to be on the move.
Mhm.
I also didn't have the luxury of really processing what it meant to kind of say goodbye to my childhood home, just because of school and
Yeah.
trying to finish this semester. But once I sat with it, I got really emotional. I got very emotional,
Mhm. Yeah.
and not just emotional for me, but I had to like tap into what my mother was feeling. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's my home for 43 years, and what attachments there are to the place, the people, the experiences within that house, right? Like that's like this big in comparison to like no. I
Mm-hmm.
was leaving my country, like I had to leave, like I left the country I call home to create a new home. And then when I got there, I had to like fight. I had to do
Yeah.
so much work to stay.
Yeah, I appreciate like your comments, Joseph. I also want to say though, like don't like take like disregard like on your challenges and experiences too, because
Of course.
because when I share my story, right, like it's not. I don't want to do like create this competition, like oh I was more oppressed than you, or
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
oppressed more than you, right?
sure.
Because that's not healthy. I know that you're not. That's not what you're doing, but
No,
at
but
the
yeah, I
same
appreciate
time, yeah, I think that's like what some people get caught up in. They're like, oh, I need to be oppressed, or
it.
oh,
No,
they
you don't want to
oppressed me. Like, yeah, I know a lot back in the days people were like competing to see who were more oppressed, and like, oh, it was like a little ugly thing,
yeah.
Um, but because I think another thing that um I remember I was going to the talking about City College again. I was like one of my friends were graduating from City College and went to the commencement ceremony, and one of the student speakers said something like so beautiful that still it's with me right now. I think it's very appropriate for social workers. It's like you can just take a look around you, uh, people around you, and I can guarantee you that each one of them they're going through like the battle of their life, through like difficult challenges, but you don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
So like just be kind,
Mm-hmm.
empathetic to everyone, right? Like because
Mm-hmm.
it's so hard to like there's no like like a tape measure to see how bad your experience was. There's always gonna be someone relatively like with worse or better experience than you. And I think about like how what do you make out of it, like how can you um and all of those things like it seems like oh you did all of this but like it was because of there's people there for me, like it was like myself I think it probably would be like super difficult to do that, so I
Oh,
think that's like
awesome.
behind every struggle there's a lot of people, your support systems, right, that are there for you for all of those things, and for you like might seem simple compared to others, but like I think that's um yeah, you taking time and acknowledging that was like a challenge and a difficulty. I think that's is a great way to like have more compassion to ourselves, right? And like not just shrug it off, like because like you can just easily oh no, like those people are going through worse, so you have no reason to blame yourself. But like I think there's like a balance there, that a healthy balance that we can use to continue like build our resilience, our focus, our vision for things.
Yeah. It's leading with
Yeah,
kindness. It's
yeah,
like that's part of my practice. Like in in acknowledging other people's struggle. Again, you pointed out like yeah, we're not comparing, but it's
yeah.
important to acknowledge
Mhm.
that people are constantly struggling, right? And
Yeah,
you know, uh, that's especially true right now with,
yeah,
arguably the greatest level of uncertainty people
yeah,
have, in the last couple hundred years,
yeah,
um, on a global scale, right?
yeah,
There's definitely individual communities have gone through um, awful, awful things. But yeah, it's just
yeah,
when you can come to a person and it's so natural for you to come to them with kindness because you understand this concept that like you don't know what's going on, you have no idea what's happening with people, and I try to have, I try to one, I like to have fun, and so I approach everything with a little bit of ease. I'm just like, yo,
yeah.
can't be too
That's
serious.
nice.
I was like, literally, we're in a field of seriousness,
Yeah,
field of just everything is serious, and there's just countless examples. There's just countless examples of people who are seen as having very little, but they're able to approach life with with hope and
Mhm.
resilience,
Yeah.
right? And that amazes that just amazes me, and it keeps me like it keeps me going, right? Like it's a reminder you don't need much, you really
Yeah.
don't. The foundation is those relationships. If you don't have the relationships, then this thing is going to be really hard. When I say this thing, I mean
Yeah.
like this is going to be so hard, and I'm seeing that right now within our graduate program, right? And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I've struggled with the most, um, and I think it's a part of the struggle, and I want to reinforce that more to all students, maybe even incoming. I mean, when I've talked to folks who are applying to the program,
Mhm.
I, I I I wasn't necessarily trying to deter them from applying, but I also wanted to be very clear about how isolating and how lonely this program can be. And it's so
Yeah.
imperative that if you can, set yourself up for just set yourself up for success. If you know this is something you want to embark on, prepare yourself. And that is having conversations with people about what you are getting ready to take on, right? What you
Mhm.
right, which is kind of like a
Yeah.
in social work, right?
Yeah.
Like meeting clients where they're at. What do they need?
Yeah. Yeah.
And oftentimes we can forget about that as
Yeah.
a social worker. Like, what is it that we
Yeah.
need? Uh,
Mhm.
and I said I struggle with that. Like, it was very hard to talk to people outside of the cohort, friends, family included, right? Where where I was like feeling truly supported, where people were really curious, right? Like, oh, what's this program? Asking those deeper questions. And it just
Mhm.
reminded me, I'm like, wait, this is not how, I don't know if everyone thinks this way, right? Like, we are in this small community within our graduate program, and
Yeah.
not just our program, but like other social work programs as well. Direct service,
Mhm.
yeah, people aren't on the same wavelength. They're not,
Yeah.
you know. I think that's one of the great things that I've identified about this program is essentially getting your ego out of the way. It's not
Oh
about how
yeah.
you want to help someone, right? Yes, there's some methodology and there's a way that you want to approach it, but it really is asking the person what they need, understanding what their experiences are, and then
Mhm.
flexible and maneuvering in your approach. Um, and I love that, like, it feels good. I'm like, yeah, it almost makes no sense to go back to like how I don't know about you, but I definitely used to think like, oh, but this is the way you should do things, right? Like, if we,
Yeah.
this is maybe you've had more experience being flexible, but I know for sure like I had this a little bit more concrete way of doing things or my approach in life. And,
Yeah.
and the more I got away from that, the more comfortable I felt as a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah, it's so interesting. And I want to talk to more, like, I honestly want to talk to more people who are in other like graduate programs. 'Cause I'm like, do you guys have these like, is this something similar or do you not?
Yeah.
Like,
I also wonder like what are going through these other programs and stuff like that actually might something I want to do with my other fellow interns from like they're going to CSE East Bay.
yep.
Like well like maybe time to check in, see how things are going and like just talk a little bit because I think it'll be good, you know.
Yeah.
Um, especially because like all of this like you talk about challenges, right? Like uh in the beginning, like for like grad schools, like I think internship being remote is also very challenging. Like,
Hmm.
cause like I tried, like I was expecting, okay, social worker gonna work in a team, work with people. Like we're not able to get that, and so I feel sometimes like not motivated enough, you know, or um not inspired enough to do things, you know, like. But I think I'm just trying to chug along and get this pandemic behind us and like being able to do all those things that we're supposed to do in person but yeah, I definitely missed that factor too about being able to be with the other staff,
Mhm.
uh, being group settings, seeing people eye to eye and like sharing food together and all of those things. I think that's like uh, definitely something to that I don't think we often talk about. Even our field seminar about this thing, I think that's something probably I'll bring it up, some reflections about uh, internship last year. I know there's some people more pragmatic, like they just want to get this out of the way.
Yep.
But I'm also trying to get like the most out of this
You should.
um, learning experience, right? Because
Yep.
you're only going through it once.
Yep. Yep. I think you absolutely should. And I think that I value creativity and innovation, and
Hmm.
I encourage people, and specifically now, but I encourage people to not only make the most of it, but reflect and identify what you want to get out of it,
Yeah.
right? Because it's easy to fall in that cycle of just like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm doing the work because people are asking me to do the work. But yeah, take that time, which is difficult. I want to acknowledge it. That's extremely difficult to take the time to
Hmm.
yourself and think about what it is that you want to get out of this experience. I can speak personally on my internship now, right? I created my internship because
Hmm.
I saw a need in the like in community colleges where there is a
Yeah.
lack of opportunity, not only for graduate social work students, right?
Yeah.
It's like field placement opportunities, but there were limited resources for those community college students to access support services.
Yeah.
And a lot of things came up. I recognize that we in social work, in my experience, we don't identify college students as at-risk populations, right?
Hmm.
Which
Yeah.
they very much are, right?
Yeah.
You could
Yeah.
argue, you can make the argument like just as much as anyone else because you've gone into a financial agreement which could bring you debt.
Yeah.
Um, who know, like you said before, you never know what the responsibility is of college students, what their financial
Yeah.
responsibilities are to family.
Yeah.
And so during COVID, I had this plan. I mean, I had a clear plan. I wrote this program out and I was like, oh, this is how it's going to work. And like, this is how the recruiting process is. This is what the recruiting process is. And these are going to be my office hours. And this is how, throw that shit out of the window.
Hmm.
Because, like, uh, to be brutally honest, students don't know me, right?
Yeah.
I was coming in and I had this expectation, like, oh, in my head, I'm like, yeah, of course, like I'm a relatable person. Like I want to help you. I want to do these things for you. And I failed to realize that's all well and good, but they don't. But how are they? Who's going to trust you?
Yeah.
You got to have some type of trust. And so,
Hmm.
what this internship has turned into is not only building out a program, uh, but understanding the complexity of
Hmm.
building relationships and program development, right?
Yeah.
Who do I need to have on my side in order to develop these relationships, right? Like what other collaborative what type of collaboration do needs to happen in order to like, and that's difficult, right? Like especially within a limited window, right?
Hmm.
As much as I do want to help, um, I it's not what I thought it was going to be, but thoroughly enjoying it because I'm getting to create something,
Hmm.
and I know that this could be used as a framework in the future.
Yeah.
And we do need, right? I know that's needed,
Yeah.
but it's hard to see when I'm not in front of people all the time. Right?
Yeah.
Am I doing anything? Like, yeah, I know I'm writing. Like, I know I'm in front of this laptop and I'm writing out this program, and I know I'm meeting people. I know I'm talking, but like, I'm not doing the direct as much as I'd like to, right? And so I totally had to go back to the drawing board. I'm like, okay, well, how
Hmm.
can I support you? And And for sure, you know, in doing podcasts, I've sent
Yeah.
these podcasts out to students, right? I've
Mm,
had formerly incarcerated people who
mm,
are doing extremely great work, who have
mm-hmm,
similar stories to some of those students. And I'm like,
mm-hmm.
listen to this narrative,
Yeah.
similar to you. Listen to this narrative. Take some pieces
Mm-hmm,
out of it, right? This is a resource. This is an online learning tool.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so it is about like, oh, going back, like, what? It's not always going to be what you think it is,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh,
it,
just social work. You always got to be resourceful, right? So I think you're tapping into that skill very well.
yeah, like figure it out. Um, yeah, man. I mean, this has just been like I don't even want to be redundant and say weird, but anytime there's limitation, I think we can agree that really great things come out of it. You know, as I reflect on our country, specifically right now, with, you know, uh, I think the center of attention has been our president and the community that supports the president. In a weird way, I came to this understanding of he might have done so much, like not directly, indirectly, he might have like encouraged so much social progress because
Mm-hmm.
there's quite a few people who have finally taken the glasses off,
Yeah.
finally looked and be like, oh wow, oh, this has always been there.
Yeah.
I can't you you can't hide anymore.
Yeah.
It has dominated our news cycles. It has
Mm-hmm.
dominated our conversations. There's no hiding. And now the next step, if somebody's if someone's still denying, that they're denial.
Yeah.
They're in denial. So it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's just fascinating to come to these kind of like revelations about like how seemingly bad things are, and also recognizing how much hope I have, and seeing the great work that people are doing.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, yeah, man. We could probably go on for hours, and I really want to do this again. And I did this with two of my classmates,
Yeah.
and we did kind of like a little decompression
Oh,
of,
cool.
of the semester, and it was really healthy. Like it was super healthy to just
Mm-hmm.
decompress. And I thought about this, and I encouraged, I don't, I'm sure you guys have a Facebook group for your class.
I think we might. Yeah.
Okay. So we have one, and if you guys don't, I would highly encourage you to like bring it up, maybe start a Facebook group. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is a really not, I mean, I said healthy, but it was highly therapeutic to
Mm.
talk about our experiences in a longer format, which is what I love about this, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no, there's no like, oh, I gotta go, or like, oh, I don't get to hear the full story. I like we legitimately get to go for like an
Yeah.
hour and
Yeah.
there, but it was, and it was a great way to, it was a great way to connect. And
Yeah.
I invited other people to do it, and I invited other people to do it with me, or do it with like their own smaller circle. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but this could be a great way, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do by any means, but I'm just
Yeah.
like
No,
this is
I
cool.
yeah. I definitely appreciate the invitation. I think because like even hearing myself talk or hearing you talk, validating our experiences, each other's experiences is being very helpful, especially after a semester that kind of probably went unchecked, like no one like came into, oh, how was your semester in this? And someone who went through the experience, right? And not necessarily someone like an instructor, who maybe has some kind of biases, or an agenda, but that's people that are like peers, that been through the experience and just want to know, connect, and build. I think that's like very beautiful that what you're doing, and really appreciate that. And yeah, I'll see. Like I don't know if I can do the same for like hold the same nice space that you're holding for me here, but like for others, like because I think uh I like that aspect of just like chatting, like not necessarily talk about like assignments or this or grades, like that's so tiring, right? But like just talking about your experiences, because I think that's the missing piece that I did not have um, this past semester, right? Because that I was expecting to have
Hmm.
uh, if we're not in a pandemic. Like I said, go to SoundCloud, get some boba, get some dessert, drinks, or whatever. Just hang out, chill, share about each other, connect. Because I definitely like cohorts. Like I feel like such a little family, little bubble that has your back. They know you. Like they'll celebrate you. They'll be there during the good and bad times. It's kind of like a unspoken contract that you sign, with people.
Yep.
So I was very surprised that happened. Actually, people just having each other's back right away, like pushing back some instructors. Like it was like, and yeah, I think that's like a definitely good sign, and definitely like you said, like a culture of the program, how they selected the people, people's intention being here, and yeah, I definitely hope to like to get any other invitations, like try and make time, be here, talk about something else or same thing,
Yeah.
part two, whatever. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. Um, so at the end of my podcast, I ask like kind of like a conclusion question,
Yeah.
and conclusion question is something. What is something that you're in love with, or that you love? Just take your time, think about it. This is I mean, I think it's intended to be kind of like a tough question,
Mm,
and something I don't know if we necessarily think about all the time, right? Like something
yeah,
in love with, and it could be someone, it could be something. Um,
yeah. I think like yeah, like I feel like I never use that like sort of like the word love a lot, especially if it's not with my partner, right, or my family. But like I think I'm like sort of like in love with hope, like
mm,
sort of like having because like sometimes like hope is like a little uh it's like a little fire that's there, but like it dims and then like goes brighter. It depends how you feed it. It's just like it's always there. Like it giving having this conversation gives so much hope and like so much life.
yeah,
I was having like pretty shitty 2 weeks, like with those things that I was telling about, like being ever doing anything from home, like feeling isolated from people. But like having this conversation like opens so much, gives so much energy to keep going. Like and yeah, I think like hope is the thing that gives us so much like life and possibilities
yep,
and unlocks people's potential. And it's always like worth to hang on to hope. And yeah, and I guess people were more in love with hope, like things will be different, and but I think that's our job to instill hope in others or rescue that hope that we know exists in people too. You might be kind of hiding away, beating down because of all the things that they've been going through, challenges, hardships, difficulties. Um, yeah, and I just wish that um, yeah, hope can be a thing for this year since
yes,
we're starting this year, right?
yep,
But hopeful, but also like working towards that hope too, Like hope is not something that will automatically make things better.
mhm,
Uh, but it's definitely a catalyst, it's fuel for ourselves to continue being like growing, being tackled every day, with um, with kindness, with empathy, compassion towards ourselves and everyone else too. So yeah.
cool, man. Well, yeah, we'll do this again for sure. I'm gonna, I know it. Um, this was great, and
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do it again, and yeah, and talking to your classmates, if anybody else wants to do it, like, is if you mention it to them, like, please send them my way. I would love to
Okay.
doing this. But yeah, man, have a good rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of your break until school starts, and like, yeah, we'll talk soon.
Couple weeks. Yeah. You
Cool.
too. Take care. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.